You know, I woke up this morning and I chose to be a content creator. I chose to make something. I chose to make content that I could share with people. But, you know, I'm starting to question whether or not I should have chose violence instead, because the people that live in this complex are so fucking loud that sometimes I can't even hear myself think. Howdy heckin' hey my dudes, how are y'all doing? Good. I'm kinda tired. Let's get on with today's video. So, I know this is something that has crossed every artist's mind at least once. You see an artist or a few different artists that just have something really unique about their art style, something that draws you into it, something that you can look at and go, ah yes, this work was definitely made by this person. And you think to yourself, you think, oh wow, I wish I had that one something that made my art like instantly recognizable. I wish I could stand out like that. And I know that this is something a lot of artists have struggled with, because when I was a younger artist, it was something that I struggled with too. I see this more commonly with younger creatives, and I've seen it in more than just the art community. There are comic artists and writers that want to have really unique paneling or really unique writing styles. I know that's something that I was going through when I started thumbnailing Forget Me Not 2. I wanted my pages to stand out a lot more because as much as I love Forget Me Not 1, there are a lot of flaws, and one of the things that I wasn't 110% happy with was how I didn't properly utilize the paneling. So I know from a comic artist perspective, you want that unique paneling and that unique setup. I've seen it with musicians and songwriters who really want that unique sound or want that unique kind of musical pattern that immediately gets recognized as theirs. If you're a creative of literally any kind, there has been a time where you wanted to make something unique that stood out as identifiably yours. And I'm gonna go on a limb here and say that I actually went through this when I started plushie making as well, because I was trying to incorporate my art style, like my style, the way I draw things, into how my plushies looked. And I really wish I could get back into plushie making because I miss it so much. But I know that it's not specific to artists who draw or artists who paint. If you're a creative in any way, shape or form, at least once, I guarantee you have thought about trying to make your work unique and make it stand out and make it 110% yours. And there's nothing wrong with wanting to stand out and have that thing that's undeniably you, but hyperfixating on this uniqueness can cause frustration, impatience, and in some really bad cases, even anxiety when things don't go your way. I personally have met several artists in my life who haven't and still don't have a consistent art style, and despite that, these people are some of the best artists that I know. They're amazing. They're able to hone on different styles and different skills. They can adapt. They are incredible. But their hyperfixation on developing a unique style has also made them some of the most unhappy artists I know. I think the most common misconception about an art style or a really unique style in general, when we're talking about the more creative community as a whole, is that an art style or a style is something that you can find within yourself. And while yes, I do believe that on a very fundamental level, every single person has a unique way of drawing things that is built within them, much like everyone's own handwriting, you didn't exit the womb knowing how to write and knowing how to write things in the very specific way that you write things. Like your letter A now, the way you write your letter A does not look the same as the way you wrote letter A when you were in kindergarten or where you were first starting to write. It was something that you had to develop and you had to care for and you had to nurture that skill in order for you to be able to write in the very specific writing style that you do. And I think the same thing goes for art. You didn't really exit the womb with a very identifiable, unique art style and being able to draw said art style right off the bat. It's very much like writing. You have to practice and you have to really care for and nurture that skill in order for it to grow and in order for your art style to truly shine through. So while yes, on a very fundamental level, your art style is within you and you can, quote, find it, it's not really about finding your art style, it's about developing your art style and nurturing your art style and letting your art style grow. And kind of piggybacking off of that, the main difference I've seen between artists that don't have a very unique style and artists who do have a very unique style is usually that the artists with their distinct art style, with their identifiable art style, have spent countless drawings and countless hours, usually over the course of several years, drawing what they love, learning the basics of art, experimenting with different styles and different techniques to see what they like and what they don't like, and they were developing their art style over time. It wasn't an overnight thing. They didn't just wake up one morning and decide that they knew exactly how they wanted to draw eyes, for example. And much like most other things, it takes time. It takes a lot of time and a lot of practice and a lot of dedication to find something that is unique and identifiable as yours. Let's get a little bit more personal for a minute. So my art style, for example, for anyone who is unaware, I originally started out my art career, I guess, as a massive Sonic fan. And for almost 3 years, I would draw exclusively Sonic fan art and Sonic fan characters. And so when I started drawing my own characters and my own things, or maybe even stuff from other fandoms, traces and elements of the Sonic style were found in my own art style because they had just been engraved in my brain at that point. And so no matter what I drew, there were elements of the Sonic the Hedgehog art style in my creations. Mostly the very, very misproportionate, massive heads and the large eyes. And it got to a point where very, very often I would have people asking me if my original characters that I had designed from scratch were Sonic fan characters, just because the style was so engraved in my brain. Then, as time went on, I started watching more cartoons and anime, and I started to subconsciously, without even realizing it, I was taking elements from these shows that I was watching, and I was incorporating them into my art style. Still with the massive heads, let's be real, but to get even more real, to get like 110% clean, sometimes I do still make the heads way too big. Like seriously, I'll sketch out the head and everything will be fine and it'll be like, oh yeah, that's cool, that'll work. And then I draw the body and the body is like ridiculously small in comparison to the head, and I have to like kind of Frankenstein it and mess around with the proportions until it looks at least somewhat decent. I still struggle with the massive heads, and I blame you, Sonic the Hedgehog. But anyway, after that, I ended up meeting a friend of mine, the Judge 12. I'll pop his little thing in the iCard, but he was a Sonic fan artist, so of course Sonic ended up coming back into my life. But other than that, he made things really, really fluffy and like really ragged in his art style. Like you could see the like individual tufts of fur even when he was animating. Very, very fluffy stuff. And I wanted to try that. And on top of trying this super fluffy kind of style, I had heard someone say that they personally didn't like black line art because it felt very boring and soulless. And so I started doing my line art in a very, very dark red instead. And for a while I really liked that. I think the red did actually add personality to my drawings. But over time, I realized that the fluff, all of the excess fluff that my friend Jessie would draw, just kind of wasn't for me. And so I ditched it. And eventually I realized that I liked purple line art much, much more than I liked the red line art. And so to this day, when I do line art, at least in my digital drawings, I use purple instead of black. And then I ended up going to uni, and one of my close friends, Cody, hi Cody, how you doing? You're most likely not watching this video at all, but Cody had come up to me and suggested that I try adding more sharp edges and more points into my character designs because he felt like it would look really cool with the rest of my style and how I already draw things. And so I started doing that, and I realized that I really, really loved it. And then on top of that, like I mentioned in a previous video, this is Caden, I started drawing symbols in the character's eyes because I saw Lavender Town doing it and I really liked how that looked, and so I felt like it just added more personality to my characters, and I incorporated that into my style. And even now, my style is still changing. Like, I literally just went through how it's changed from when I was like 10 to where it is now, and it is still changing. Very, very recently, I decided that I want to try experimenting with line variation in order to give my line art more personality. one scroll through my DeviantArt or my Instagram and you can literally see the stages that my art style has gone in. It has changed dozens and dozens of times over, and it will change dozens and dozens of times more in the future, because your art style is always going to change and tweak and develop as you learn more things and as you experiment with more things. Something that I think helped me be more content with my art style, even though it was still very inconsistent at the time, was having a consistent theme that I consciously chose to put in the artwork, just so that even though the style was inconsistent, the actual theme or the colors or something like that was consistent, and that was what kept my pieces together. Like I'd previously mentioned, when I was a kid, I was a contributor to the Sonic the Hedgehog fandom, so a lot of my artwork was Sonic related, and that was the consistent theme that was keeping my artwork together, even though the styles looked very, very different. And when I moved on to drawing my original characters, those original characters became the theme because I drew them almost exclusively. So again, even though the art style was changing and growing and developing, there was a consistent theme because I was always drawing the same thing. Hell, there was a period of time where this is back when I was just starting to use orange and purple as like my trademark colors, as like my branding. When I started doing that, I would always incorporate those two colors into my artwork, even if it was just an orange to purple overlay over the artwork, or if I was using orange for the highlights and purple for the shadows, and I was like using these blend modes and stuff. No matter what I drew during that period of time, I was trying to incorporate the orange and the purple. At the time, I was doing it just because orange and purple were my trademark and I wanted it to be identifiable, but it was another thing that was keeping my artwork consistent because those colors were always present. The colored line art is also a really good example of having something that's consistent in your artworks by choice, something that you're deliberately putting in your artwork in order to keep them tied together and connect them all. All of the pieces that I made from specific time periods, you can see there is a consistent theme, again, even if the art style isn't consistent. Like, for example, when I went from doing really, really fluffy stuff and really ragged stuff to going back to doing kind of more smooth and rounded edges, I kept the red line art when I was still doing the red line art. And so even though the art style changed, the fact that the red line art was still there still made the work identifiable as my own. And I think doing this makes people more comfortable to practice and learn and experiment at their own pace and really just enjoy themselves rather than burning out because they're dead set on having a unique art style as soon as possible. Because if you have something that's deliberately consistent within your art style, then you don't feel afraid. You can draw more poses, you can draw more character expressions, you can play around with a bunch of different things, you can play around with perspective, and like if you're drawing the same characters, like the same set of characters, or if you have colored line art that you use for every single piece, or if there's a certain color or certain shades that you like to use for every single piece, those things will tie the work together no matter how drastically different it is, and it makes you feel more comfortable experimenting and trying new things. Because even if, say for example, one time you drew a bust of a character and the next you're drawing like a perspective shot of them like doing that one scene from The Matrix where they bend backwards and stuff like that, if you have the colored line art or the specific colors, or it's the same character or anything like that, despite those two pieces looking drastically different, those little elements that you made the active choice to keep consistent will make those pieces look consistent with each other. And I feel like that's a really, really important thing when it comes to experimenting and trying new things. You want to feel comfortable doing that. And if you're a kind of person that's really stuck trying to find their art style or trying to find something that is uniquely theirs and is just how they do things, I feel like this will really help you explore boundaries and kind of fiddle around and see what works for you, because that fear of having a really inconsistent looking feed or a really inconsistent looking portfolio gets a little bit eased. Just even if it's only a little bit, because you've got that one thing or maybe that couple of things that are consistent throughout pieces that tie them together, make them look more unified. I realize that this video sounds a lot like the video I made about writing for fun and not for fame, and what I'm about to say next really isn't going to help that situation. But at the end of the day, art and being creative is all about self-expression and having fun. You don't need a unique art style in order to enjoy making art, and if you're not having fun or you're not enjoying what you do, then stop. Switch it up. Try something new. Experiment. It's through doing these things and through learning that we grow as artists. And as long as you're still growing as an artist, your style will come to you naturally. It's only a matter of time. And with that being said, I think I'm done rambling about art styles and trying to find your art style and experimenting and all that, because I'm not gonna lie, I've been on a really high kick about doing what you do for fun and doing what you do for enjoyment. And so I feel like if I keep going, I'm just gonna get really, really preachy, and I don't think anyone wants to listen to me be really, really preachy. But just remember, whether you're an artist in terms of drawing or painting or animating, whether or not you're an artist in terms of like a musical artist, like a musician or a singer, or you're a comic artist, or you're a writer, or you do plushies or anything like that, do what you do because it's fun. Make sure you're enjoying yourself, make sure you experiment, and just do what it is that you love. Another thing that I said in my Write for Fun Not Fame video is to make a difference with the content you create, and that's something I really stand by. I got that quote from John Bellion. The direct quote is make a difference with the music you create, but I feel like it applies to creatives as a whole. It applies to the entire creative industry, and so I like to say make a difference with the content you create. But anyway, y'all know the drill by now. Stay warm, stay cozy, stay toasty. If you sneeze during the video at all, then bless you. And I'll be seeing you in another one. Bye-bye!